Hey everybody, it's the interview queen Alicia Atout here, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to my interview with Brandon Boyd. Hello, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you over there?
Good, thanks. Where are you?
I'm in Toronto, Canada.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Where are you calling in from today?
I am in Southern California in the Santa Monica Mountains.
Okay, I was just mentioning to your manager, I'm so envious of anyone with warm weather right now. We had a crazy blizzard a couple of days back. I can't wait to be
hmm
over there again.
Yeah, I mean, it's cold for us now. It's like in the high 40s where I am, but it's a little colder where I am just because I'm in the mountains. But it's in the 70s during the day.
I love how that's a bit colder. I'm so jealous. Well, it's a very exciting time right now, as in a couple of months you'll be releasing your new album, Echoes and Cocoons. You've shared before how it's really weird just having a song swimming around in your mind and finally it's able to be born into the wild. So is that something that kind of gets you every time, that excitement and thrill of releasing new music?
Yes, without fail. It's both wonderfully fulfilling to, like I'd mentioned before, to like have this thing. It's almost like a life form swimming around in your body and in your mind, and it's in the tips of your fingers, and you do everything in your power to like put it together and electrify it and then pull the switch down and it's alive, that whole experience. It's also it can be a complex process because you realize somewhere in there that you are sharing a part of yourself that you don't fully understand yet.
Mhm.
And the only way to fully understand it, or at least point in the direction of understanding, is to share it. And so it comes with a very real sense of vulnerability. But I've also come to learn that making oneself vulnerable is an important part of the creative process.
And did that take a minute for you to actually get used to, just the vulnerability and realizing I'm sharing a lot of myself with people? Or did you kind of have that groove from the beginning and you had that level of comfort?
I had to learn. I had to learn how to get comfortable in that sharing because, inevitably when we start down any creative path, it's not like we're going to be experts at it from square one. In fact, more often than not, we're going to be quite terrible, and we're chasing more of a desire to express ourselves in a particular medium. And then if you spend enough time in that forum, maybe you get good at it. And I've been really blessed to have a few decades now under my belt of sharing material, sharing music, and sharing art and stuff. And so I've gotten a little less nervous about it, but it never really fully goes away. And I actually think that there's something constructive about remaining with a relative humility around what you put out. I think that it's good that I still get nervous before I put things out because it means that I don't fully understand myself yet. And who fully understands themselves? I always have this thing where it's like, you meet the most certain person in the room about anything, and that's the one you have to be suspicious of. It's like
Very
deep,
true.
deep certainty. It's like, wow, I kind of envy that, but at the same time, you're probably wrong. You know?
I've been told so many times if you feel like you're nervous about something, it simply means at the bottom line that you just care a lot about it. You do
Yeah,
want to know what people have to feel, what they think about all of your artwork, or your art in general. So I definitely think that it's a good thing to always have.
agreed.
Well, when it does come to this record, you've shared a few songs from it, the newest being Diamond My Dryer. And this song just has such a fun groove right out of the gate. It's a whole vibe. And I know that it's also kind of a tale of discovery of what is important in life when forced to just slow down, which so many of us were forced to do during the last year and a half, 2 years. So what did you kind of realize ended up being most important to you?
Ooh, um, that's a weighted question. I suppose I'm still kind of in that process because we're still here almost 2 years later. Um, it's so wild to think about it too. I mean, I remember when that first lockdown happened, it was like, guys, we might be in this for a couple of months. And I remember being like, oh my God, a couple of
I
months?
can't do
If you would
it.
have if you would have told any of us that it's like it's gonna be a couple of years, maybe a few years, we probably would have not behaved as well as we did, relatively speaking. But yeah, back to your question. I think some of the things that I realized amongst that forced slowing of a day-to-day pace was how important to be in relationship to someone is, and what that kind of mirrors to self. You know, I really think that the only way that we can truly understand ourselves and have any level of self-perception that is even like remotely accurate is to see ourselves through the eyes of someone else. I think that, you know, it's something to be said from an evolutionary point of view. It's like we are a communal species. We need each other. Like an infant human child will die if it's not touched. Like we're that dependent on each other. And I think that we take it for granted as we grow up and we get older. We're like, I got this. You know, I got a Wi-Fi signal. I can have food delivered to my house.
You strive for the independence. You don't realize how much you rely on and need that community.
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose in this track, Diamond My Dryer, that might be a more kind of abstract takeaway, but I suppose I was, you know, I fell on some hard times, as so many of us did, in my relationship during the first wave of lockdown. And everything was beautiful and kind of blissful for like 6 or 8 months or something. You know, it felt like we were on our own little island, and then things got they got a little more real at a certain point. And I feel like I've learned that that wasn't unique to my experience. I feel like most people went through some version of that, even if it was like with their kids or with their partner or their, you know, their friend that they may have locked down with. There are different sort of realms that we dive into when we're getting to know someone, and it can be years into a relationship too. But day-to-day life takes us out and distracts us and does all these things. And day-to-day life is also so successfully consumed by a sort of societal and spiritual noise that we don't really have a chance to clue into direct signal, like the best stuff. And so what the weird kind of like silver lining / blessing of this whole thing was that I really realized how important this person was to me. And I think that she realized how important I was to her as well. And then I played her the song and I tried to explain it to her. And she's like, I hear something different completely, but it's like, that's great. It doesn't matter.
The sentiment was there.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere.
That's so funny. If I know exactly what you're talking about, because I do feel like whether you were locked up with a friend, a sibling, for me, it was the latter. You know, you do still see each other every day, but then you can't leave. You can't have your little outings. You can't kind of have your space apart. And then things just get really tense sometimes over the dumbest things that never would have happened in the past, you know? So the fact that you two were able to get on that same page after everything and this song was born of it is a really lovely thing. So I'm glad to hear that.
It's not the only track on the record as well that was sort of born of a kind of isolation of sorts. And there was very much, I think this is also something that can be scaled out amongst our brothers and sisters out there, but it's like there was a cocooning that took place for a lot of us. It's like we stayed in, we drew these like boundaries around us, and in a lot of ways that can be a really good thing. There's also obviously there's the negative effect, which is like that's the echoes part, where we drew these cocoons around ourselves and with each other, and then at a certain point all you can hear is your own voice echoing back at you, and that's not a good thing necessarily. Echoes are fun when you play with them, but when
they can get real damn annoying fast.
Oh yeah, especially when they're your only source of communication is your own voice echoing back at you constantly. That's the kind of stuff that tears apart societies, you know. So there's a lot of this kind of material in amongst the record.
I really appreciate you going in depth there, because I did want to kind of get more of the serious question out of the way, because there's a lot of really cool stuff that's been happening, of course, on the horizon. You recently dropped a really cool collaborative cover of Scorpions with AWOL Nation and Portugal the Man. So I wanted to ask you if we could kind of turn that around and you could have anybody put their spin on one of your tracks, whether Incubus or solo. Who would you love to see do so?
Oh man, well, it's an open invitation, so anyone that wants to can. I don't know. I've never thought about that before. Um, there are a few sort of like Incubus cover bands. I think they call them tribute bands in this day and age. I've seen little bits and bobs here and there. Some of them are really good too. Some of them are better than we are. It's interesting how sometimes it's easier to play other people's music than your own. We occasionally do covers. Wind of Change by the Scorpions I loved that song growing up. And I remember when Aaron from AWOL Nation floated the idea to me. Initially, I was like, I don't know if we can do that. This is like a modern classic, and
Yeah,
does
like
it
let's not
need
touch
any?
it.
Yeah. There are certain songs where it's like it's almost dangerous to try and to rethink them. But Aaron brought such a unique approach to it that it felt like it was relatively safe territory. And I thought it's a relatively challenging song to sing, especially the chorus, because it's very like, it's like a big, I feel like if there was an audience in front of us, it might be easier to do, but I was
Right,
like
so you can
at home
feed
by
off
myself.
of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, exactly. But we figured it out, and I think it sounds really cool. It's very unique. Yeah, so hopefully people enjoy it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, something else that I kind of discovered recently about you that I definitely thought was interesting is growing up, you did not have a television in your home, but you did have a VCR where you'd have movie nights a couple of times a week. And I know that The
Mm.
Shining was a big one for you. So did that movie just completely freak you out as a kid? Or what were some of the other films that you remember loving?
So just to clarify, we had a TV. We had one of those like 1980s giant TVs that's like 4 feet thick. We're still like tubes,
Right.
but it was like, probably 4.5 feet high. It was huge. But we didn't have cable.
That
And
is what I meant.
where I lived close to here in like the Santa Monica Mountains, there's no cell phone reception. There's no television reception. And it's a real blessing because you have the chance to be bored.
Yeah.
Boredom is highly underrated. But yeah, we had a VCR, and we had this like weekly ritual where we would go pick out 2 movies from what was it, Warehouse or Blockbuster. Those things existed back in the day. A place where you would go to rent movies and you would physically pick out a film. Imagine that. But yeah, The Shining, I probably watched it about 10 years too early, just for like my psychology, especially like my burgeoning psychology.
That can do some crazy stuff to the mind when you're really young and watch it. Like that could terrify you.
It's true. It also, but I suppose it did show me that I have the capacity for a very overactive imagination, and all it needed was like just little stokings here and there by horror films and sci-fi movies. Yeah, and then I was like terrified to be alone for periods of time. I wouldn't go to the bathroom by myself. Whatever's going to come out of the toilet and get me, I don't know. But what other films kind of had that effect? I remember being highly affected by Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Steven Spielberg's movie. I was just fascinated by it. I was fascinated by anything kind of science fiction, extraterrestrial, occult-based horror. Still to this day, those are like my favorite movies. When somebody gets that sort of genre, sci-fi, horror, occult type thing, when they get it right, all I can do is talk about it. My most recent favorite ones were Ari Aster's films, Hereditary and Midsommar. Did you see any of those?
I did. I saw both of them at Midsummer. Like I'm watching it the whole time. It's almost like you're in disbelief that any of this could be happening, Like they brought you into an entirely different world. I thought it was great.
Yeah, really weirdly like believable too.
Right.
Like even as far-fetched as the plot is, you're sort of like, I feel like this is happening somewhere in Scandinavia.
I feel the same way. I just started watching Handmaid's Tale, and that is the same kind of thing where it just sucks you into this completely different world where you think this is far-fetched, but somehow this could happen. Like it really messes with your mind.
Yeah, those are the best kinds of films and television series are the ones that are kind of out there, but then they're able to ignite a part of your imagination where you're like, I feel like this might be possible. So we end up learning things from shows and movies like that.
And that also can be the scariest part. The fact that
Absolutely.
there is a potential realism to it all.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I really liked Ari Aster's um, depiction of a psychedelic state in Midsommar. The way that, whether it was him or whether it was the director of photography, was able to sort of show the early stages of a deep psychedelic state. Everyone has tried, they try and do it in film, and it's usually like goes into like a
Yeah, it's usually overdone and it kind of goes
overdone
down.
incense and peppermint kind of thing and
Very
spinning
much so.
kaleidoscopes, which fine, it's like that is perhaps a version of it, but like the way that he made the landscape around the characters just like really subtly undulating was like, whoa, that is really close, which I
Very
have
well
to
done.
assume that it's hard to capture because it's such a unique, state of being. But anyway.
Right. I also wasn't sure if you were going to somewhat bring up Goonies because I did notice a couple of random quotes. You posted photographs of that film before.
Yeah.
For me, it's a classic I remember watching over and over growing up. So I also wasn't sure if you're
Mm.
going to throw that one in there, but some really good picks.
I should mention Goonies because I've seen that movie probably 50 times
It's
and
impressive.
I still enjoy it to this day. Uh, it's funny how that film became almost like a template for so many coming of age movies
Mhm.
since then. There's all these our favorite things have a Goonies feel to them. Like even like
Absolutely.
Stranger Things. To
Oh,
me, that's like
definitely.
it's like using the template of Goonies, and to some high degree of success too. So it's good.
Well, the last thing I wanted to bring up is how March is going to be absolutely crazy for you because not only does the record come out, but Incubus will be back out there touring. There are, of course, so many wonderful elements when it comes to being on the road. So I was just wondering, is there anything in particular you're most looking forward to? And I don't even mean cities or states, but just any restaurants, stores, or cool spots you've discovered over
Hmm.
the years that you've really missed during this pandemic.
Oh, wow. There's something about. I mean, touring is challenging. It's challenging to go to a different city every single day or every couple of days and be like, okay, I'm in Toronto now and I have 24 hours. And you, a lot of the time, end up wanting to just like rest because you're sort of tired from the
Of
constant
course.
travel. But some of these places definitely do have things that are sites and attractions that are worth kind of like pushing past your own travel weariness and going to experience. But that being said, I think that the thing that I'm most looking forward to is just um, communing with other people, like being around new people again. I suppose that would be a really difficult thing to take for granted to, be introduced to thousands of new people every day, which in our case, that was sort of, that became our norm for most of our lives at this point. And, but I've been given a whole new appreciation around it because of these last 2 years, among other things. And I'm just really excited to um, go back out and sing with like thousands of friends and strangers and ex-lovers, like people that
Right.
have people from my past, people from my present, people potentially from my future. It's an amazing thing. And, just the concert itself is, to me, it's a perfect example of a modern ritual that is really important. And we can survive these periods of time, as we've been shown. We can survive these periods of time where we don't see each other, but we're not better off for it. I think that we need our rituals as human beings. I think we need to commune together and celebrate together and sing at the top of our lungs together and imbibe together and just be around each other. So that's what I'm looking forward to most.
I love that so much. It all really does come back to community, which is how we started this whole thing. So those are
Yep.
beautiful parting words. So Brandon, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time for coming on here. It's been a pleasure being able to catch up with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you too. I appreciate your time.
Of course, to everyone watching, this has been Brandon Boyd. Be sure to check out aliciatoot.com for plenty more exclusive interviews and features, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.